Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is Podcast at Ground Zero, your home for the apocalypse. Hopefully I caught all that. For episode 76, The Trigger Effect. I am the Apocalypse Nerd, and he is Adam Bomb Clancy. For those who are watching the live stream, sorry we're a little bit late because I was having computer issues as normal, especially because we were probably doing it at a recording at a different time than we normally record. Because
yes, it's broad daylight outside.
I know. It's like if you could see, like I got out the studio is lit by natural light, sunlight today, but
and you know, to keep in the theme of changing the normal time, I have changed my normal location to the downstairs of Pagan House with our cat mausoleum behind us, featuring all of the ashes we've collected over the years from cats who've passed away. It's pretty morbid here at Pagan House.
That's yeah, you're one morose motherfucker. Let me tell you.
Thank you very much.
Oh God! All right, so so today we're going to talk about the trigger effect. Again, I'm going to keep away from a lot of pre-talk banter because again, now we have an outlet for that for off-topic, and there's going to be probably the next one's going to be another off-topic, or maybe the second one because I've got a bunch of stuff that's come up and a lot of stuff I want to share. So.
Oh yeah, there's been a good run of apocalypse themes, the movies, low budget, small independent ones that have turned up recently.
A lot of them on Netflix, so there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about. So we're gonna do that soon, but we're gonna try to keep to what I said we wanted to do is mainly talk about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the trigger effect. And actually, there's a bunch of other movies lined up that we're going to talk about besides the off-topic. We need to do some other stuff too. It's like we need, like I told people, it's hard to do books because I've read a lot of books, but a lot of it's like I haven't read it in 35 years, and we got to reread it, and then maybe Scott doesn't happen. So movies are easy, so that's a little bit of the laziness in us, but. We'll try to catch up on some different books to try to do some books and we need to go back to the catalog to see if we've done all the broad topics that there are to do, because we did a lot of broad topics, transportation and food, and I think we hit a lot of that stuff. So we'll have to see if there's something else we could kind of do with that. But today's going to be the trigger effect. The trigger effect is a film from 1996, starring Kyle MacLachlan. Now, as the Wikipedia says, the film follows the downward spiral of society during a widespread and lengthy power outage in Southern California. The trigger effect explores the idea that a simple power outage, I can't talk today, can potentially trigger a chain of lengthy, unfavorable events, implying that modern society cannot live peacefully together without technology. So, Scott asked me to ask why I wanted to talk about the trigger effect, because in theory, this sounds like a great idea, because okay, we're going to see the breakdown in society, why the apocalypse is happening. And I remember seeing it in 1996, and I've just watched it again recently. First time I've watched it since 1996, so it's been 22 years. So, upon watching the film, I kind of remembered that I didn't like it that much back in 1996. And that aspect has held up very well.
22 years later has not put a new gloss on this particular...
Yeah, if anything, it's worse. It's not, it's like I said, it didn't hold up.
You just did something with the screen.
Yeah, I wanted to balance myself out to kind of like how you have it with the lower third. Because what happens is, the lower thirds don't work anymore in Chrome. So
yeah, I just tried that myself and fiddled around with the lower third, and it didn't get me.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't, because it's anyway, it's a developers third-party stuff. It doesn't work in Chrome anymore, so you have to use like IE, and IE doesn't work on my computer for whatever reason. So it's like guess what? No more lower thirds. It doesn't work in Firefox. I tried. So I remember going into the movie in 1996. It's like, oh, the power goes out and society collapses. I'm like, oh,
wasn't this an HBO made for HBO film?
No, this was in the theaters.
Oh, really? Okay, I had forgotten that completely.
It was in the theaters, released in the United States, August of 1996, with a budget of $8 million and box office returns of 3.6.
Well, that actually makes perfect sense. That holds up.
Yeah, it was not. It didn't have good critical reception. Criticized for being safe, predictable. Blah blah blah. A sturdy. It didn't do well. So I was going into it thinking, oh, this is going to be apocalyptic, and it wasn't. I remember being disappointed at that. But over the time, I thought, well, you know what? It's not really a post-apocalyptic film, but it's a study in social behavior and breakdown of when things go wrong. And I thought, okay, that would be cool kind of thing, because that's what's going to happen when it all goes down. But again, watching it 22 years later, and I'm like, they didn't pull it off as well as I kind of had hoped. So
yeah, there's
but before you know what?
Sure.
So everybody who's listening, spoiler alert, because we're going to spoil. This is a movie we're going to spoil completely because it's 22 years old. Sorry, but we kind of have to talk about the stuff to kind of.
And it's not that great. There's not a lot in this film that we got to keep that one close to the chest, because when people see it, they're going to really love it when this happens. No, there's going to be none of that.
You know what? I don't really think there is any of those moments.
Yeah, there just isn't.
So people are thinking, guys, then why did you review this film? Well, again, I explained. I thought it, was better than I remember. But you know what? Also, what we can't. Every film we review can't be a fucking Maserati. Okay, no. It can't be. So we are suffering, so you don't have to watch this.
So where do you want to start breaking this down? Sort of plot-wise, character-wise, event, what happens, when, and how.
Well, I guess character-wise, I mean, there's I guess there's three main characters. I guess, or the little group is like you have Kyle MacLachlan, his wife. They have
played by Elizabeth Shue. I want to point out, and it almost at the top of Elizabeth Shue's hotness. I can remember a friend of mine rated Elizabeth Shue back in the day 11 Clydesdales, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what are you? She's 11 Clydesdales. Like, yes, that's how many Clydesdales it would take to pull me out from between her legs, I think was his comment. So there we go. We've got our first completely inappropriate comment that should never have been said out loud.
Classic.
Yes. In his defense, it was the 90s. And in my defense for using it today, I have no defense. I shouldn't have said that.
I rest my case.
I rest my case. I am completely guilty. But yes, this is back when Elizabeth Shue was not, I think it's before leaving Las Vegas or right around. It's very close to that. When she was really pulling in, I mean, she was probably a bigger box office draw at the time than Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah. He had done Twin Peaks. He had done several David Lynch films. He was in Blue Velvet. He was Twin Peaks. He also did
Dune.
Oh yeah, Dune. Duh. Dune, but he wasn't a big box office draw. Got more popular or known from Twin Peaks. Then I think like how my wife remembers him. It's like, oh, like when we started watching Twin Peaks. Oh, Sex and the City. He's such and such. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's right.
So I think he got more popular with Sex and the City, unfortunately.
Yeah. And there's a number of other decent character actors. And I mean, Dermot Mulroney, I think the thing I remember him from back then was Young Guns. He was in the remake of the Billy the Kid story with Charlie Sheen, and Estevez, from that. But like their next door neighbor, Bill, who's played by Bill Strumovich, that's a guy who's been, sort of a classic character actor. Michael Rooker, who has done some good post-apocalyptic shit, both in Jeremiah and in Walking Dead. He shows up in this. Michael Rooker is always good to see.
Yeah, he's a very strong, working character actor, just always working,
Yeah. And the other guy, I can't remember the actor's name, and I was trying to look him up online, was the guy who played the pharmacist.
Oh, yes.
Who would not give him the medication for the kid without, our computer's down, and, William Lucking. That's the actor's name, William Lucking. This is a guy who has done, again, brilliant TV B-level work for a million years. He was all over. He was on the X-Files a couple of times. He was on Millennium a couple times. Did a lot of good Fox work in the 90s. Just another solid character actor. And as far as that goes, the support cast is fine. Nobody turns in a really shit performance with the material they're handed.
Yeah, I mean, nothing was Oscar worthy by any means, but nobody did a bad job.
Yeah, if there's any problem with this film, it is again
the writers.
The writers. It plays it way too safe, don't you think?
Yes, very, very, very safe. So we have the actors, a lot of good actors. The main characters are Kyle MacLachlan, Elizabeth Shue, his wife. Their friend comes over as being the main character, and you have some neighbors. So the setup is everybody's a happy family, everybody's and they really start setting these social stereotypes right from the beginning, like, oh, look, the minorities are talking in the movie, they don't belong here, and how dare they be rude, or the minority characters are like, oh, look, the white woman just cut in front of me. They really kind of heavy hand the stereotypes of people in this movie.
And kind of heavy hand the sort of you're in the suburbs and you're only happy on the surface. That somehow there's this brewing dissatisfaction, where the husband's always worried that he's not manly enough or tough enough because he's not throwing down at the theater,
Should I go back and say something?
Yeah.
Well, after they've already left. Unlike, I'll interject my own personal story. I don't know if I've ever told you that story. High school. I was probably a senior. We go to the movies. It's pretty crowded.
Any idea which film?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
We're talking, it's probably like 86, 87. It could have been anything. So we're going down the theater, meeting a bunch of several of my friends, and for some reason, I don't remember the circumstance, but for some reason, some guy mouths off at my group or something, because like we're looking for seats or I can't remember what it was, causing some kind of distraction. Like the movie's getting ready to start, and the guy starts talking, starts mouthing off, trying to be tough because he's with some girl at the theater. He's trying to talk tough, and I kind of stop, like, because my friends were in front of me, and I kind of stop, and I'm like kind of like towards the last of the row, and I kind of look over at the guy, and I go, you know what? Pain is a terrible price to pay to impress your girlfriend.
And how much more impressing of his girlfriend was there after that?
0.
Yeah, well.
Now, mind you, again, this is me at my peak, probably mid wrestling season, down to my fighting weight, looking good, so looking good and tough, not like the mess I've let myself become as I got older. So, but
the idea that everyone's sort of dissatisfied with their life, and the Kyle MacLachlan and Shue have a new baby, and he's all being a sort of a resentful, passive aggressive wiener over the fact that she's paying all of her attention to the baby and none to him. It's just this kind of the setup is like, everyone's unhappy, and I'm looking at their huge freaking house in Los Angeles, and
Oh yeah, because he makes a lot of money, and he's that stereotype, and they got the neighbors that they're just casually friendly with. Oh, you coming over for football? Yeah, I'll see you then. I won't forget. So everybody's all nice and chummy on the surface, everything. Yeah. But there's a seething, boiling, rage ready to come out of everybody once anything happens. Okay, they were triggered, hence the trigger effect. But
a term used before it became what it is today.
Yes, see, they were way ahead of their time. So now the premise is this is the characters, and this is what they set us up with. It's like everybody's like kind of nice on the surface, but they're not. Everybody's got problems. Everybody's like again, very kind of cheesy. If you got to say so, very. It's very mundane the way everything is like so stereotyped, with that. And then the event happens. All of a sudden, was it Friday night? Friday night in the middle of the night. Was it Friday night in the middle of the night?
It was certainly in the middle of the night, which I liked. This idea that it you wake up to it. You don't even get that moment of, hey, why doesn't the TV work? Your alarm doesn't go off. You sleep late.
Power goes out everywhere. Apparently, like they're like, oh, is Bob have power? No, and so the power goes out. The phone lines aren't working. They get in there, because the thing is they had to leave the house. Was the power goes out. Their baby's sick, and they need to get a script. So the doctor, everything's, the phones aren't working, the computer, everything's out, like in apparently a huge area. So they can't get the script. So the guy leaves to try to go.
The car starts in the morning.
Yeah.
But the radio is full of snow. It's just a hiss.
Everything's gone. Phones aren't working. Radio's out. But you keep, did you notice one thing throughout the movie? You kept on hearing helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
There were constantly helicopters overhead.
Yeah. Now that's
a lot.
Here's the thing that I'm not 100% sure about. I've always been told that's an LA sound. You know what I mean? That living in LA, the copters overhead is just a constant sound, like you're in Vietnam again or something. But they definitely dialed it up because it's not just over, Compton. It's over all the city. It's there's a constant force in the air, sort of looking down and spying on and observing whatever's happening in the city. Yeah, there's a constant sort of presence of authority that you can sort of get in the background. Although there weren't that many cops on the ground, you know what I mean? I didn't see cops on the ground and on the street corners trying to keep control of the situation. But boy, you could hear the copters overhead.
You could hear the copters. These go into the pharmacy. The power goes out, and the thing is, here's the thing with this. They're trying to demonstrate kind of a collapse of. Well, if you're seeing all these collapses of nicety, like all of us, people are getting ruder to each other. Like, I mean, immediately. It hasn't even been like 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's been out like. The way everybody's acting, I figure, we're probably our third, fourth day, maybe. No, it is like on from the second it happened. Now I guess part of it too is because phones aren't working, radios aren't working, so nobody has any communication. And
not to mention air conditioning, and they make a point that everybody's sweltering.
So it's hot, and remember, folks, this is 1996, so. There is internet, but it's not internet. It's dial-up, probably using AOL. It is not the all-connected, worldwide connected communication system.
Did you see a cell phone in the movie?
Zero.
I didn't remember seeing a cell phone. I saw only landlines used.
Yeah, only cell phone, no cell phones, because again, it's 96. Cell phones exist, of course, but things with cell phones didn't start to become a little more commonplace until probably early 2000s. It didn't
Nope.
start, but anyway,
no satellite radio in the cars.
no satellite radio. One of the guys had a beeper. He's like, "Oh, I'm off today," because there's no phone. So, I mean, I guess you could say that caused people to maybe panic more because there's no radio, there's no communication. But I'm sure there's got to be people around with short waves. Maybe have a battery backup generator, or they have. I think even they had back then. They had short waves that were handheld radios back then too. So somebody, or the police station, somebody had to know something somewhere, because they made it seem like this is very widespread, but they didn't tell you how widespread it was and how there was no communication. Apparently, nobody knew anything. It seemed a little too. Again, it's not the modern era, so things could get cut off pretty easily, a lot more easily than it is now, and isolated. But it's a large swath that's cut off that has no clue what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And again, people start getting rude really quick. Like he goes to the pharmacist to get medicine for his baby. Script's not in. The guy's been there multiple times to fill the script. The guy's like, "I don't know you. I don't like you." And he starts like, it's been a couple of hours, and all of a sudden the pharmacist wants to throw down with you because he doesn't like you because you're new to the area. It's like, I mean,
yeah,
it degraded a little fast, for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the idea that there's clearly a huge problem here with this blackout. And you're right, the blackout's only maybe 8 hours old at this point. And the pharmacist is like, nope, you'll have to wait till the computer's back up unless you have paper. Bye. And it's like, and no, they won't accept your credit card. And, they won't even do a paper receipt with the credit card. They won't take an imprint. And back in 1996, people were still doing that shit.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of the kachingers, plenty of those around,
But it was like, the moment somebody has the opportunity to be a martinet and exercise their petty power over somebody else, they do. They immediately do. And it reminds me a little bit of your complaint. It's like, how long did it take these guys to default to cannibalism? They seem to have gone for cannibalism on day one. Well, apparently, at the Trigger effect, they decided to go for, I'm going to throw down on you 4 hours into the blackout or whatever. And it just seemed a little fast.
Oh yeah, because again, it's probably, like you said, it's been maybe 8 to 10 hours, and when he's leaving the pharmacy without his medicine, or you could already see people are boarding up their shops like a hurricane was coming. It hasn't even been a half a day yet.
Well, remember, it's 96, and how long from the LA riots after the Rodney King verdict it was? LA was absolutely terrified of social disorder in that time period.
Yeah, I think you might be right there.
So when I saw the boards going up, the first thing I thought of was those riots.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but still, it was pretty damn quick. It hadn't even been a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really fast.
Yeah.
So again, things are spiraling fast. I mean, really, because this was Saturday. By Sunday, they're like, we're leaving town, and a lot of things occur before that.
I think you're right. I think that it's literally that fast. I mean,
middle of the night, Friday night, the power goes out. Saturday
night, is Saturday night when the guy who was one of the contractors working on their house comes back to steal shit.
Yep. And before that, they'd already went out. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit for folks. So their buddy comes and they decide to go out, and again, it's been so he winds up trying to go to the hospital. Hospital's in chaos. It's like, apparently it's like, well, they did preface it with a couple of the other hospitals had their generators down, so they couldn't, so they were overflux. But it seemed like basically like the day after, they'd been nuked and all the casualties were coming in or something. He couldn't get medicine, so he went back to the pharmacy and he stole the medicine because already he was from I'm trying to be a good husband, and I don't want to be the bad person. He's stealing medicine because it affected him.
Yeah. Where it's and here's the thing, he seemed more motivated to steal the medicine, not because his baby's sick and I'm going to protect my baby, but because the baby's sick, and if I come back to the house again without the medicine, Elizabeth Shue is going to chew me a new asshole, for why didn't you get it? Why didn't you make this happen? He goes out into the world, faces this sort of crazy pants world, comes back and says, I couldn't get the medicine. And her response is a little bit like, aren't you a man? And I'm like,
I'm going to go handle it because you don't wear the pants in the family.
Yeah, she immediately just kind of goes with like, if you were a real man who loved his child, you'd have come back with medicine. And so he goes out and commits a crime. That's his response to that.
Less than 24 hours after a blackout.
Yeah. Who knows?
My power went out last year. Well, no, the fall of 2017 when the hurricane came through our area, on the West Coast. My power was down in my area was down for 19 hours. Okay. Some other areas around me, half hour away, were down for like a week or something like that. Nobody was trying to break into my house and kill me and steal my stuff, just from, because the power went out, because we didn't think, cell towers still didn't. Well, I think they might have worked because they were on backup generators, but again, different world. But, people didn't lose their shit all of a sudden just from, being out of power for a few days, Yeah,
well, when my power went out for like 40 hours after it was 40 hours after which is quite a long time for your power to be out in an urban area. The one reason it didn't, nobody panicked was we still had access to the outside world. We knew where the power was out and where it wasn't out. Yes, my phone's going to run out of power, relatively soon here as I'm checking the internet on my phone. But I won't be able to recharge unless I go plug it into the car or whatever. But, I can see a map put up by my power company telling me where the power I was out and where it wasn't. And literally it was like the end of my block had power. On the other side of the street, there was power and there wasn't any power where I was. And so I was like, well, I can see what's going on. And hell, I can even see the schedule of repair. Nobody panicked. If I was literally in a situation where none of my devices worked, I had no access to outside information, I think I'd have been batshit crazy at 40 hours.
Yeah.
I think at 40 hours, I would have really started to worry, but not at 6 or 8 or whatever it was that, was going on in that movie.
Yeah. Like I said, the timetables were very moved up. It wasn't like I said, it had been like 2, 3, 4 days. It's like, okay, all right, there's something. All right. It was less than 24 hours, maybe 12. And people are already like, they were stealing medicine. They went to the gun store.
Oh, that's right.
To buy a shotgun. 12 hours into this, they're out buying shotguns. There's lines out the door at the gun shop.
And that was a good performance by Richard Schiff, who everyone remembers from the West Wing, being one of the script writers or the communications director for the White House and the West Wing. That was Richard Schiff, and his performance as the gun store owner, I quite liked.
Oh yeah,
I really liked that. But not the least of which, because he sold him the right weapon for the if you're panicking about the blackout, here's the right weapon. Also, the idea that we're 12 hours in and the gun prices have already quadrupled, which he's giving away his Rolex watch
here's a $600 watch. I'll give you $300 in credit. I'll give you the shotgun and a box of shells. I thought you said you're out of shells. Okay, I won't give you any shells.
Yeah, but he gave him the right weapon. 12 gauge pump, super simple. scatter pattern for people who've never really fired a gun before. I'll give him credit for that. That's the weapon I would have sold him.
Oh yeah, basic home defense weapon. So it. But again, they were still continuing stereotypes. Not like he was, his friend who is now beneath him because he's a six-figure company man. His friend's just a contractor. He's like, you negotiate with him because it's like, because then his friend starts to be like, what? Because I deal with these kind of low-class people. No, I'm not saying that, but yes,
But yes, I'm kind of saying that.
Just really perpetuating these really, two-dimensional stereotypes of characters and how everybody's just like, like the real people are coming out. That's what this is about. Like how are people going to come to how they base instincts and how they feel, is really what this movie is about, and the people's interaction, but it happens. So I guess, you got to condense it into an hour and a half, but it was like, Jesus, it's the next evening and everything's gone berserk already,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not even sundown on the first day, and we're already tooling up.
Yeah,
and we have our first home invasion by somebody who already had access to the house, which I thought was a nice touch. That the guy who comes to burgle the house.
Well, they set that up earlier in the movie. How things were disappearing already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in one aspect, that means the fucking blackout didn't change anything, right? No. This guy who comes to burgle the house when the power is off, he was already lifting shit from the house from the job site. So the blackout doesn't actually change anything in that respect, I suppose.
Well, it made it easier for him.
Yeah, but it certainly changed their reaction to him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because he doesn't walk away from that scenario. He ends up dead as a hammer through
but not by their hands.
Oh no, they finished him off. Remember?
Oh yeah, his buddy finished him off. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets shot by a neighbor when they go to check on him. Hey, I think you might have killed this guy. The guy attacks him, and they end up stabbing him.
Yeah, he just had a big old kitchen knife.
Yeah, and ends up stabbing him to death in the street. But yeah, there and as part of that whole thing, that is to say, somebody's breaking into the house. They go and pick up the baseball bat and the shotgun, and
no, they don't pick up the shotgun because the shotgun isn't where it's supposed to be.
Oh, that's right.
Because somebody who's drunk, his drunk wife who doesn't like guns, threw it in the pool
with the shells.
The whole 9 yards.
Now I got to tell you, this annoyed me deeply on a number of levels. There's this thing that they do to Elizabeth Shue in this, where her job is just to be terrible to Paul McLaughlin. I mean, first of all, she belittles his manhood for not coming back with the medicine
constantly.
Yeah, and constantly does that, and then she does this weird thing where she's being way too flirty with Dermot Mulrooney for this situation. Okay, and that's terrible as well, because that just amps up the tension in the house. That just dials it up to 11. And then her brilliant contribution to their safety is to throw the gun in the pool with the shells. And I'm just like, oh my God. How many more bad decisions can we, pile on top of Elizabeth Shue? So her job was just to, constantly add more stress and constantly add more malfunctions and problems to the situation. And I think that was just a function of bad writing. I mean,
oh yeah. It's just, and it was just like, because they went through all this effort to get this thing, and then she throws it in the pool, and then they need it, and it's like, look, see, you really did need it. Like they were very heavy-handed with the messages they were trying to convey with this film. So, but then again, it shows, like, okay, the neighbor had a gun and shot the guy, and then now all of a sudden Kyle doesn't like him because the guy planted a gun on the guy to cover them up. Because it's funny, like you don't see a police presence anywhere, but there's one shot fired, and all of a sudden the cops are there.
Yeah, how? My first question was how? How did anyone call it in? Is it just that this is a super rich, well-to-do neighborhood, so the cops have some sort of patrol there and they hear it, and came to the sign?
They were literally there within a couple minutes.
Well, yeah, it's still dark. I'm thinking, if there's
it's the middle of the night too.
If there's no phone communication and they shoot somebody, I kind of expected that poor bastard to be dead in the middle of the street
until the morning.
Which would have been, in some ways, would have been grislier to me. We've killed a guy in the neighborhood. Now what do we do? Well,
yeah, I thought, I didn't remember. I was like, oh, they're gonna have to deal with this. They're gonna have to get rid of the body or something. No, the cops come within a couple of minutes, and then an ambulance comes to pull the body away. It's like, so all right, so you guys apparently could communicate somehow, probably with your shortwaves. So you're trying to tell me you could contact somebody who's further out with a shortwave who contacted somebody? Because there's got to be some other area that had power to know what's going on. Again, that's what fell flat for me. That even though it's a different area, a different era of communication, but if their radios are working, those short, they could, and it's a police station. They have broad spectrum radios to some extent, because they have to broadcast out to, somebody's got to be able to communicate to maybe the next town over. And then maybe that town heard the next town. It's kind of down the line.
When they asked the cops that night, what's going on? The cops were like, moo. I mean, I'm like, are you kidding me? I could imagine if they had said something like, hey, all that emergency response equipment that we created during the Cold War, we kind of let it all fall into ruin after the Soviet Union collapsed in 91. And so here we are 6 years later, pre 9/11. And we're totally unprepared, right? We've completely dropped the ball on being prepared for a natural disaster because we started spending the money on .coms instead of the kind of stuff we spent it on the Cold War. If that had been sort of a plot point or sort of had come up that
sure, I would have been okay with that.
Yeah, I would have been fine with that. But this idea that even the cops don't know what's going on. I would, a situation like that, I want the police truck with the big loudspeaker on top coming through the neighborhoods.
Everything is fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess we don't do that anymore since the Cold War. But have that kind of communication where you'd get the bullet points from the government, which is, the blackout affects everything west of the Mississippi. FEMA is on the case. Fear not, American citizens. But there's nothing. There's just total silence, and that just didn't seem. And the silence that lets people stew in their own juices.
It was a little unbelievable, especially since why didn't they go to the nuclear power plant, which they show later in the movie, which wasn't that far apparently. Why don't you drive up to the gates? Because this is pre 9/11, so you could get close to them and be like, is the plant out? What's going on? What do you know? Because they got to have some kind of communication system.
Holy shit. You would hope that the nuclear power plant hooked into the Department of Energy and, various other security organs, because holy shit, it's a nuclear power plant. They might have more. Yeah.
Even pre 9/11, you think that they'd have at least some level, Yeah.
There was no troops on the streets. Do you remember? Did we do the thing?
It was only a day, dude. Of course, there's no troops on the streets yet.
You're right. How? Well, then again, did we watch? Did we talk about how it ends? How it all ends? Yet on this show?
How it ends?
How it all ends is the one with what's his name? Who played the last king of Scotland?
Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker, the ghost dog. Yeah. Did we talk about that one yet?
No, that's on my watch list. So
when it's all going down, I noticed that there's a part where they're trying to move around the country, and they run into roadblocks where there's people trying to control the movement of. There's official groups, the army, were trying to control the movement of people, around the country, and that made sense in an attempt to sort of control the chaos and keep the roads from being clogged. It's like, no, don't, you can't go through here. This area is closed or whatever. I sort of expected to see that, but there was none of that. There was like,
there wasn't a lot of time to. Again, it hadn't been that long. They were on the road Sunday. They were on the. It happened Friday in the middle of the night. After the shooting, which now makes him look bad. His neighbor, like, oh my God, you killed that guy to help me, and then planted a gun. And he's like, are we good anymore? No. So it goes back to the theme of like, you really don't know how people are until you're in a crisis and who the real person is. Because there's all kinds of infighting starts, not infighting, but all kinds of mistrust starts in the neighborhood. Like, well, why don't you put your car there to block the road? Well, I don't want to put my car there. What about your generator? Hey, I got a family too. Everybody starts turning on each other. And then the movie starts to turn into an episode of The Twilight Zone, The Monster on Maple Street, which is the first thing I thought of when I...
Yeah, absolutely. Right on the nose. When the monsters are coming to Maple Street.
Yeah. I didn't think that back in 1996, but when I rewatched them, like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, the monsters in Maple Street. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like, power's out. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody trusts each other. Everybody's turning on each other already. Like, oh, I mean, again, that was Sunday night when that shooting happened, middle of the night. So it's been like 24 hours by that time. So they pack up and fucking leave. We're going to Colorado to your parents. Like,
what I love is they're going to leave the relative safety of their house. Although at this point they're like, the house isn't safe. Somebody broke in. And I'm like, dude, it was somebody who already had access to the house. It's not like, the hordes of, zombies are pouring out of the inner city to loot all of the rich neighborhoods. That's not what's happening here. It's just one dude, who was already in your house has broken back into your house. Their panic to flee their neighborhood seemed
premature.
Yeah, if not contrived. They're not out of food. They're not out of water. Nothing like that is going on. And there's a cat because it's the internet. Of course, there's a cat.
Of course, there's a cat. There's cats were created by the internet. Didn't you know that?
I'm pretty sure that's exactly right. They may run the internet at this point. Their decision after this one incident to flee the neighborhood, take off, seems weirdly premature. And as if Colorado is going to be any better. They have no idea, there are not houses burning in their neighborhood. They can't see columns of smoke rising over the city of Los Angeles.
Nope. It's so they pack. So it's contrived and premature. They pack up, hit the road. They're like, we have so much. We have only, this is the amount of miles. This is the miles per gallon. This is how much gas we have in my car. This is how much we could carry. We're going to need to get more gas along the way. So they set themselves up for conflict later by going, oh, we're going to have to stop and get 7 gallons of gas. He specifically says 7 gallons of gas.
Yeah.
So then they hit the road, and then of course it leads for more of these contrived situations where they stop at the gas station on the long road, and they get some warm soda to drink, and then the guy from the movie theater who was causing a problem, is there, and he's out of place because he's African American, and they're basically in redneck country where they're at.
So he's getting the stink eye now from.
Oh yeah, they were purposely showing him getting stink eye, and he was nervous, and except for the guys who owned the place were like, here you go, sorry I couldn't do any better for you. This is all.
Yeah. It was interesting that the owners are cool, but everybody else in the place is all like, meh. And then Michael Rooker comes over and is weird and vaguely threatening. But I tell you what, to jump ahead a little bit, Michael Rooker, who, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer was under his belt. by this point, and that's probably what people most knew him from. So if Michael Rooker's involved, his job is to be weird and off-putting with an undertone of violence. And so he shows up in this movie, and his job is to be weird and off-putting with an undertone of violence. And ultimately, though, when shit goes down, I did not get the impression that he's Henry Portrait of a serial killer. He's just another scared, desperate person.
Yeah, just like they were, which is kind of the point they were trying to make. Because to fast forward it a little bit, because we're towards the end of the movie now. So Michael, he's asking for gas, and of course he asks the African American guy, and that creates a problem, and and then Kyle MacLachlan and his family leave, and they're on the road, and somebody's giving away free ice cream on the side of the road because I guess the ice cream's melting. So he gets free ice cream, and all the cars are passing, and then of course they set up yet another convenient scenario where this BMW drives by and pulls up this old little country farmhouse, and of course Kyle MacLachlan's friends it's like obviously that they drove here from the city and they killed whoever's there and took their house, because less than 48 hours later apparently everybody is a sociopath,
Yeah, and that's it. That's their presumption too. They see a Beamer at a farm and think farmers don't have Beamers. This must be people from the city who've come out and are squatting on the good land now, and there's nothing to suggest that. And the reason they run into Michael Rooker again is because they see a car on the side of the road and decide to siphon gas out of it.
Yep, they were going to siphon the gas. The car is on the side of the road with the hood up. They're going to stop to get some gas.
Yeah,
they're going to take his gas, but he's sleeping in the car. And again, they're still perpetuating this thing that he's this bad guy. They're making it seem like he's the bad guy in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, we're already spoiling the movie, so they get into a conflict because he just wants a ride, and they see he has a gun, so they think he's going to do something. So they get their gun, and then they want to point the gun at him, and he winds up shooting one of them, and he flips out on him, tells him to get out. He's like, basically he's like, listen, you pointed the gun at me. You have a baby in this car. What is wrong with you? I just wanted a ride. So now I'm going to take all your stuff, though.
He kicks him out on the side of the road. Dermot Mulroney's got a gut shot wound. He's not looking great.
Nope.
And off Michael Rooker goes with their car, having compounded, what do you call it? Assault with a deadly weapon with Grand Theft Auto. Yeah,
because apparently, again, everything is still in place. Yeah, emergency services are still coming because they just know to come. Police know to come because
I will admit there is a point where they resolved the shooting by going and getting a car and taking that car to the hospital and bringing an ambulance. I guess is how they finally resolved that. But that there was an ambulance available, which just sort of amazes me.
Yeah, and he goes back to the farmhouse, and it winds up being the guy who was in the diner, with
the
theater with his daughter, and he's like, I know somebody lives here, and that guy like, what are you doing? They tried to make us think that the bad minority came from the city and killed the people in the farmhouse and took their stuff, But he's like, no, these are friends I know who owns this house, kind of, and they're trying to perpetuate these stereotypes a lot, and he comes back.
Perpetuate the idea that because they were in the theater 2 days ago, and when told to be quiet, their reaction was "fuck you." You can't tell me what to say. That somehow, because of that interaction, they're going to think that this guy, our suburban white people will naturally think that he must be a thug. If he has a BMW, it can't be from a six-figure salary. It must be from, he must be working the corners or something,
he stole it,
Yeah, exactly. But
whereas Michael Rourke's car had the VIN numbers taken off it because he probably stole it from somebody,
Yeah, exactly. He's actually scribbled off. He's probably a car thief. We got that for sure. But he's, even so, when the violent confrontation happens, he pulls that gun because he sees them about what it looks like they're about to shoot him.
Yeah.
That's
he didn't have his gun out beforehand.
Yeah. In fact, he had it tucked away, like not flashing it at all, hoping that they wouldn't see it, because you see the gun, you panic. But yeah, the violent situations of the film are almost self-created. There's no solid bad guys. I'm trying to remember the guy on, there's one character played by, I want to say not Jack Warden, but the one actor on The Monsters Are Coming to Maple Street, who's like the primary shit disturber, right? There's one guy who's just can't stop talking shit and turning neighbors against each other and being the primary shit disturber. There's no primary shit disturber.
No, nobody's really that bad. I mean, yeah, when they had the meeting and they're like, well, you have a generator, but why can't we use your car for this? You have a little bit of that back and forth, but nothing overwhelming,
Yeah. There's no committed assholes, or committed, sort of violent thug types. Nobody shows up. These violent thugs that they are absolutely terrified are everywhere are conspicuously absent.
They don't exist. They are their own worst enemies, is what they're trying to,
Yeah, they are the violent thugs. They engage in looting and shoplifting and threatening people with guns. Yeah, and breaking into houses they don't belong in.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a lot of the point too. That these hordes of looters from the inner city don't materialize. Instead, the people who are worried about those things become the marauders. They become the problem themselves.
Oh yeah, because they show that people only really have a thin veil of civility about them, and then once things go awry, that the mask comes off and everybody is just a bad guy and it breaks down.
Well, as a 90s film, they play it really safe. The things that people do and the things that go wrong, despite the fact they end up with people shot and killed in this film, are pretty low level and low key. It does not become The Purge at any point. And I think that if somebody was to present this film, as a remake or whatever, they'd dial it up to 13 or 14.
Well, they'd have to, because again, the movie was done very safe. You know,
if you did it again, they would have to. They'd be having people going again straight to the cannibalisms day one.
Oh yeah.
Their neighbor across the street would already have banners in his front yard made of human skin. Before the sun goes down on the first day of the black.
It's like, dude, we just lost power 2 hours ago. Well, yeah, you can't be too sure.
Yeah, you got to plan ahead. That's why I packed my wife in salt for the winter season.
Yeah, she'll be delicious.
If those Pilates are finally going to pay off. But
that lean muscle.
So. It's a really safe film. It's a really, sort of quiet film. There's not any huge moments. And as a result, there's this thing where, you're sort of it's almost annoying how low key it is. Say hello, Ash. No, you're Wednesday. Say hello, Wednesday. Say goodbye, Wednesday.
But it's Monday. But
yeah, sorry. Cat, two black cats, can hardly tell them apart. I have to tell them apart based on their collars. Ash and Wednesday, because we're so inventive here at Pagan Publishing.
You are very clever.
Thank you. But yeah, the film is really low key. The film is almost studiously undramatic, and that's a huge problem.
Oh, they toted that it was a thriller. They toted that it was. It fell very short on all those. Like the concept, the high level concept is pretty solid. The concept of what it is, but their execution was poor.
Yeah.
Very poor,
Yeah. Now, and to me, in some ways, I'm rather disappointed on a number of levels because it's an $8 million film. And that wasn't a lot of money in 1996. Not a lot of money now for making a movie. I mean,
it was more in '96, so that was
True.
that's probably equivalent. I don't know for inflation. That's probably like a 15 to 20 now, or something like that.
Most of that probably went to our trippage of stars at the front, because they were still at the top of their game.
Yeah.
So it was a mid-budget thing, and it just doesn't feel like they. I mean, I just watched. There's a couple of low-budget, small. What We Leave Behind. What things remain, I think, is on Netflix right now. Clearly made for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a much superior post-apocalyptic film. We'll be talking about that soon. They spent their money in a far more conscientious way, and not the least of which on a script that really brought conflict and tension to the screen. It's like this film, instead of having conflict and tension, driving these characters, a lot of it felt like they're wigging out over super petty annoyances, particularly the first day. The way that everyone loses their civility over next to nothing, in my humble opinion. Granted, once they're out on the road and they're out of gas and they've got a baby in the car and they've got to get to Colorado, then they start really making bad decisions and, ugly decisions. But, this film did not deliver. I don't know much more we can say about it than that. It just doesn't deliver what we hope for.
No, and like I said, it fell short on a lot. Like I said, they were very, very two-dimensional. A lot of the characters and the scenarios are very, they're like archetypes. They were very standardized. Again, that thin veil of civility. They're trying to
shallow. I think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, shallow. That the characters are very shallow. That the little things all of a sudden, like, I'm going to be buying guns and stealing. It doesn't work very well. Again, I mean, I guess, again, they had and the way it ended was they're taken to the hospital, and this is late Sunday night, 48 hours after the power goes out, and then it picks up where the power's back on, everything's normal. And they don't tell us how long it was afterwards. Yeah. And then,
and they're driving back into their neighborhood.
Yep, back in their neighborhood. He parks the car. The house is still, partially under construction and
not looted.
Not looted, and he sees the neighbor who shot the guy who was looking out for you. As much as you despise him for whatever reason, he was trying to help you, and he was looking for you to help him out by saying, "Yeah, the guy had a gun," and trying to look out for each other. But you were too. They're trying to say that he was too high, like, "Oh, I'm better than you," and I lied, and this is bad. Now they're not friends anymore. You can see them looking at each other across the yard. Like, oh, we can't go back to the way we were, because of all this bad stuff that happened in a 48-hour period, Yeah.
And, and there's no explanation for why it goes out. And I guess that's not the point, why this thing happened.
And there doesn't need to be.
Or how it's resolved. You're right. There's no need for that. But again, the compression of the crisis
bugs me.
Just really felt problematic.
It was probably it was too. I mean, if there was build up to these scenarios, I'd be a little more forgiving.
Yeah. Like if their water went out. Like, do you remember if their water went out? I don't remember their water going out. If suddenly there's no more water in the house and you've got 3 days, where suddenly water's an issue in Los Angeles, which is frankly built on a desert, I can see shit going sideways with water much faster than electricity.
Well, we don't know because they left so fast.
Yeah.
So, like I said, again, faithful viewers and listeners, you could probably skip this one. Yeah. And again, why did we review it? Because again, my memory is failing me.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Thinking back to it, I thought it was better than I knew it wasn't a great film, and I guess I kind of had an idealistic memory of, oh, well, it kind of shows like the social breakdown and how things break down real quick, and that's pretty apocalyptic and it is, the subject matter is like showing how things break down when things break down. That's why I wanted to do the movie, but then looking at it again 22 years later, I'm like, yeah, it really wasn't good, and I kind of remember not liking it back then. So, but again, I thought the subject was kind of on topic because of how people act. And again, I think the things that happen to these people in a collapse scenario would happen to people. I think you would see these type of things happening, but since they did it, like you said, in such an accelerated timeline, it felt very short because it seemed too unrealistic and it wasn't that entertaining. It was, again, very shallow.
Yeah. I'd like to propose that we get a look at some of our other Netflix available apocalypse that are out there, like What Still Remains, which is from just last year, and the other one is This Is How It Ends, or How It Ends, I guess. There's a couple of others that I could want to point out, but there is a new crop of post-apocalyptic.
Oh, there's a bunch of stuff. There's the not well received Bird Box. There is one I pointed out to Scott the other day, Io, abandoning Earth kind of scenario. There's a bunch of stuff out there, and we're gonna do some of these, and we're gonna talk about a lot of that stuff. We're gonna save a lot of that stuff for the off-topic subject because there's a lot out there.
Yeah. There's a Z for Zachariah that's available. It's another decent, I think, that has Chris Pine in it, if you can believe that. There's a number of interesting small.
Oh, Chris Pine was also in Carriers.
Yes, he was. So he's clearly filling his post-apocalyptic punch card, his dance card.
Yeah,
which is good. It's good. More of that, please. You're better off with those. I do want to boost some of those later, especially What Still Remains, which was a really interesting super low budget film. Have really good thoughts about that.
Yeah.
How It Ends is a little bit bigger budget and a little bit more, over the top.
Yeah. So that's it, folks. The Trigger Effect. In theory and concept, it was a pretty good idea. It just the execution was poor on that one, so it wasn't that good. Again, it's on Netflix right now. If you want to see for yourself, please do. But we think you could skip that one. And again, we haven't really done a lot of reviews where we tell people to skip it. So I don't think we've ever told anybody to skip it because normally we do things we want to recommend. But again, I had this wild idea that I wanted to do this movie because thinking back in my memory, like, because of the breakdowns aside, this is going to be a great idea. It really wasn't, but that's okay. You know what? Again, like I said, they all can't be winners. So
not this time.
Not this time.
Bring you much better films, or at least a film we can argue about. I kind of hope we're waiting for Jared to see a couple of the ones that I'm ahead of him on, and see if you just completely go, no, Glancy, were you hit in the head before you watch the movie? And see whether or not we agree on everything.
Yeah. So we'll take a look at that. We'll talk about that like on another off topic. And like I said, we got plenty of movies to review. I don't want to skip to be known as the post-apocalyptic movie review podcast. So we're gonna have to come up with some other things to talk about.
There's a lot of post-apocalyptic movies out there right now.
Yeah, there is. So, but we'll talk about this stuff. So, all right, that's it, folks. Thank you for again joining us. Sorry for the gap, but we ran into the holiday season and the new year, and that just kind of fucks everything up. So, but we'll get back. We're gonna, like I always say, we'll get back on track, and we do for a little bit, but then something always happens. But the holidays really kind of mess you up. So, so that's gonna be it for this week, folks. And like I said, we're gonna get some others out there soon. We got some other movies lined up. We're gonna do another off topic installment because I got some off-topic stuff we got some off-topic stuff to talk about, and that's it. And as always, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, please. If wow, I just drew a blank here. Again, just be socially responsible. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to just the audio from the blog, you can subscribe by iTunes or any of the other pod feeders that you use. You could also sign up for the newsletter on the blog, because again, blog is a central hub. Everything gets posted out from there. Again, YouTube just is the vehicle for recording. So, follow the blog if you can. Just subscribe by, we don't send anything extra. It's just when I make a post, it's just so you know what's going on. So, and that's it, folks. As always, we thank you for your time, for joining us today or whenever you're listening. And we'll be back soon. So, good day, not good night, good day. And we will see you on the wastelands.